Big Zay.
Morning, Brad.
Morning, boys. What's going on?
Friday the 13th, buddy. Don't know how much you study it, but yeah. Judas, David's guy, was the 13th guest at the Last Supper, and I believe God died. Jesus was killed on the Friday, so that's how it started. Hope you're happy.
Judas is also from Indiana, right?
Oh, wow. Schoolboy legend.
Starting
Judas.
early, Brad. Starting early. Schoolboy legend. Yeah. Good morning, Bigsy.
Hey, Bigsy. How are you, buddy?
I'm good. But now I'm starting to question heading to practice today or not. If it is, I didn't look at the calendar yet.
Spooky out. It's very scary. So,
but they're practicing on a Friday.
Yeah, are they practicing on a Friday?
Because it's only Wednesdays. That
Thomas Brown yesterday, help us clarify or understand what's going on here, because Thomas Brown announced the walkthrough Wednesdays, or the walkthrough, how the change to practice and the approach. Meanwhile, up in Minneapolis, we hear that the Vikings took advantage of the extra day by padding out and going full contact, apparently, because they're getting ready for the playoffs. Why did Thomas Brown do what he's doing?
Well, he's talking about keeping guys fresh, and that is key at this time of season. And next week, a walkthrough on Wednesday is absolutely going to be the decision of any coach coming off a Monday night game. The Bears are going to be on a short week, and then the week after that, it'll be a walkthrough Wednesday because they're playing on Thursday, right? Yep. The day after Christmas. So I think he's just sort of settling them into this routine and schedule. Certainly a fair question, but they had the long flight back from San Francisco, and they do have some areas on the roster where they're a little beat up. But so they'll get after it today. They will practice tomorrow as well, and there'll be a walkthrough on Sunday before they depart for Minneapolis. So they're going to get all the work in that they need. It's about executing against a football team that's playing at a high level right now in the Vikings.
I got a text from a friend last night, Brad, who wanted to know if I've ever seen a player that did not want to go into a game. And
how about that?
Yeah, and I said, Nate Davis?
Well, you know who that happened? That's how Akeem Hicks
that's right.
was traded out of New Orleans. The team that drafted him, as he was told to go in, and there was some type of disagreement between Akeem and Sean Payton, and shortly after that, Akeem was traded to the New England Patriots.
Whatever happened to Akeem Hicks? What's he doing now?
He wanted out of Chicago.
I don't know. He was a really good player for the Bears.
Really good player for the
Bears. A period of time. There's no question about that. And that was if you look at all the moves that the former general manager Ryan Pace made, and that was a really good one.
Well, we're spending a lot of time looking at the moves the current general manager has made and whether or not they deserve Ryan Poles returning for another season, source of debate and conversation over the next 4 weeks, because they fired the coach and now the scrutiny shifts upstairs, Brad. You know how it works. Dan Wiederer, your colleague in the Tribune, has a big story this morning on ChicagoTribune.com looking at that topic, and I think that it is a worthy debate. He's got 1 year left on his contract. You've written that it could be a contract extension coming at the end of the season. How are they balancing all this, and what do you think happens next?
Well, I think it's going to come down to how Kevin Warren and how George McCaskey feel about Ryan in that position, the moves that he's made, his leadership ability, and whether or not he's the best guy for the job. And for us to see a change, Kevin's going to have to do a 180 from that press conference that they held 72 hours after the firing of Matt Eberflus. Like, he was clear that Poles would be back and be in that position, and so he'd have to really, it would be like flip meet flop to change directions in 5 weeks, with the only caveat being, in my mind, that the Bears land on a head coaching candidate that is going to have very specific demands in terms of some player personnel staffing, or I'm going to need my GM with me, that type of thing. Is that coach out there in this cycle right now? I don't know, but you couldn't rule anything out if that happened. But I know it's been a hot topic. They go out, they get blown out in San Francisco. It doesn't make sense to me, and I've said this to you guys before, to have his future, Ryan Poles' future, hinge on games led by an interim head coach.
And as we know, there is very little that a general manager can do at this point. I don't know how he's supposed to make them better for the final 4 games of the year. That work was already done, and we're seeing kind of what's left of that, and the roster decisions, what's left of the coaching decisions, etc.
Yeah, so I just you can debate the pros and cons, but it would seem to me that the decision has been made. And
the decision's made, maybe, perhaps, but I do wonder this. I do wonder how that affects the coaching search, and I do wonder how that will affect a guy who comes in with a personality and a power structure that he envisions himself being at the top of. And I wonder how that would affect the general manager and the questions that the coach might ask during the course of an interview, or he doesn't even have to ask because it's going to be assumed that this is the guy who is at the front of your organization. I don't think Mike Vrabel, for instance, is going to come in and necessarily think that he's second in command to anybody.
No, and I think Vrabel would probably take that approach with any organization. Like, sure, that wouldn't just be a Bears thing. Although, I would imagine that Ryan Poles has a relationship with Mike Vrabel. Poles was working his way up the ladder in the early stages of his career when Mike Vrabel was a player for the Kansas City Chiefs. So I would assume that they've got at least some level of relationship there.
I'm very curious, Brad, what you thought of the Seth Weckersham, young guy. He was a young guy. Back in the day, I believe he was one of those SI guys, and he is now with ESPN, I believe, and he wrote a story where he said that Belichick and I think it was Matt Patricia, Josh McDaniels, and Mike Lombardi were meeting, talking about that the Bears didn't want Bill. That wouldn't be a place for him. They agreed it was the most coveted job, but they didn't believe he'd get hired there. And they all seem to believe that Ben Johnson is the number one candidate. That would mean, a hiring cycle that would go probably past the Super Bowl.
Well, yeah, it would stretch out, right? As long as the Lions are alive, if that's if Ben Johnson's going to be their number one target, you're going to be waiting a while. And just imagine that. We could do this for like 2 more months, right? We'd have about that much time to kick around the entire coaching search angle. But yeah, I think Belichick, we talked about it yesterday, took the job in Chapel Hill because it wasn't clear that NFL owners would be very keen on hiring him. And that's what coaches that are out of the business do. They watch the games, they look at the tape, and they try to determine what the game of dominoes is going to be like at the end of the season, which jobs are going to open up, like who's going to be going where, and things of that nature. And so, because I talk to coaches that are out of work semi-regularly, and like these guys are more in tune with what's going on around the entire league than they are when they've got a job, because when they've got a job, they're just focused on what's happening with the players in their room and their building. Now that when they're out, they watch them all.
Bingo. Bingo.
That's why you talk to Bill.
How is, if Ryan Poles is at the forefront of this coaching search, how do you not call him in the last 2 weeks to find out what he thinks as he's had all this time to study your team?
But
how do they not do that?
I said this to you guys yesterday. You'd have to pull that off in a way, in my opinion, that it's very clear that you've got serious interest. Like, you can't do a...
What's wrong with having serious interest in Bill Belichick?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
I think that he's 73, that, like, if you're looking for...
Dude, look, come on. You're the Bears.
How long?
You're the Bears.
How old was George Halas when he
You got to call. You got to make the phone call.
How
Ryan
old
Poles,
was George
Kevin
Halas
Warren,
when he retired?
whoever.
I mean, you've had older coaches.
The fact they didn't call is ridiculous.
I mean, I have heard that what one guy I talked to about Belichick, this was going back a week and a half or so, thought that he would want to bring Matt Patricia as his top personnel guy wherever he goes. So,
not working here, Brad. It's not working here. I mean,
okay,
every
Dave,
possibility you have to explore.
You're getting really, really excited about this, but there's not any other teams that have been looking at him either. It's not like the Bears are the one team.
I don't care about other teams.
Hey,
I'm not in
the Bears,
Jacksonville.
Bears,
I'm not in other places.
The Bears once tried to hire Nick Saban, and it came down to Jerry Angelo wanted to keep control of personnel. I'm going to keep my job. You do your job. Okay, we're not going to be able to work together. That's what it came down to.
But at least that experiment ended up in the Super Bowl.
Well, they
won the NFC
but they
championship.
They did talk to the guy.
In
they
2004.
did go over it. Maybe they picked up some things.
Right. Exactly. That's a good example.
That's what I'm saying.
That's why you do that.
You don't have to. You're not. When he tells you
you're
Matt
not obligated
Patricia,
to hire him.
Exactly. Yeah. But I would love to know what Bill knows.
I mean, Bill's going to look at it and say the offensive line stinks. The defensive line hasn't played well. I'm not sure what your coordinator I think you're going to get mostly the obvious from him, but maybe I'm wrong on that.
We'll never know.
We'll never know. And they didn't do it. And I think that just it's a missed opportunity. And it's just it doesn't fill you with a ton of confidence as this search begins.
Oh man, there's so many other things you could start with that don't fill you with confidence when it comes.
Well, this is on the list. Then it's a long one. I'm not going to feel bad about getting looking at the Bears and thinking they neglected the fact that they could have actually talked to the most qualified coach ever.
I hear you, Dave, but you're getting real fired up. You cannot tell me you'd have the same level of enthusiasm if they had a 2-hour meeting with Bill Belichick at O'Hare and feel, well, that means they've unlocked the keys to
right.
I want them to check boxes. I want them to check boxes.
You know what I find amusing, Brad, is that you are correct, but what you're saying is, well, he's going to point out all of the obvious that somehow wasn't obvious to the Bears before the season began.
Yeah, I can't imagine, Bill Belichick's not going to be used by anyone. And so, yeah, maybe they could have had legit, serious interest in him, but obviously that didn't happen. I think a lot of people believe that the team will likely head in the direction of getting an offensive guy.
Yeah.
That no one would rule out something else, but getting a guy with a different background or from the other side of the ball, he'd have to blow them away in a number of different areas. Just in terms of this guy would be an impeccable leader for the team, and we really love his plan on offense, starting with the coaching staff and how they're going to go about developing Caleb Williams.
Yeah. Taking the conventional route has gotten the Bears exactly 0 playoff wins in 13 years. Taking the conventional route has gotten them 4 general managers, 5 head coaches, and 9 offensive coordinators since George McCaskey took over in May of 2011. Taking the conventional route's not working. How
have they always gone? Phil Emery was an unconventional hire.
It was a conventional search. It was a conventional.
Mark Trestman was a very unconventional hire, I think. They haven't always gone the conventional route. Like what they've gone the wrong
process.
route.
The process has been conventional. This process would be unconventional to go after Bill Belichick to see what he's got, or to do you need to do something different. You do. I mean,
hopefully they'll do something different by not involving some retired football guy this time, Ernie Accorsi or Bill Polian, guys who were once totally dialed in and probably have a much smaller circle of people they're leaning on in retirement, that using them as kind of point men in your search. That's get away from that. Do something different in that regard.
Brad, meanwhile, they got a game Monday night, and I'm just curious. We look at how they played Minnesota close when they were here in Chicago. Not close enough. They lost the game. It feels like they're a different team now, and Minnesota's a different team now. It's so weird to me that this looks like a bridge too far when you think about it. It wasn't that long ago where they could compete with these guys. They didn't run the ball in that game, and I don't know how they're going to run it now, and I don't know how they're going to stop the run, and I frankly don't know what they're going to do defensively. There's also more tape out there on what they're trying to do offensively. I just feel like all of a sudden this has turned into a significantly less than battle between two teams.
Yeah, they were able to really rally in that game. Like, that didn't look like a nip and tuck game between division rivals from the start. And as we know, they got the 17 points in the fourth quarter. They got the onside kick, which that could be headed to extinction if you're paying attention to what happens in these league meetings. And so they give themselves a chance at the end. They were within striking distance, and they came up with a huge rally. I agree they look a little bit different, especially from the standpoint that the game will be indoors in Minnesota. I think it's going to be much more challenging for the Bears to protect Caleb Williams. Prior to this year, Minnesota had been kind of a different team on the artificial surface at home than it was on the road. They've been really good away from home under Kevin O'Connell this year, and that might have started at the end of last year. So they stopped Justin Jefferson last time, right? You look at that and you say, wow, bang-up job against Justin Jefferson. If you told someone you're going to hold him to 2 catches for 27 yards before the game, you're going to think it's a whale of a game for the Bears, and they're probably going to be successful. Well, Jordan Addison went off for a career day. I think he had over 160 yards, and you guys remember T.J. Hockenson, the tight end, had a bunch of plays after, I think, halftime in that game. He had over 100 yards, and so I don't know how they're going to stop him. I think it's a really big challenge for him. You're looking at it and you're saying, when and where can this losing streak end? And I'm just not sure it'll take place Monday night.
All righty, Brad. Thank you, buddy. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, Brad.